That's a brilliant idea. Go and get ready and we'll head out on a pomegranate hunt. I got ready so quickly that morning that I think I must have beaten a world record. In 5 minutes, I pulled on my adventure jeans and my old Tintin jumper, packed my rucksack with water bottle, an apple and a banana, put on my wellies, brushed my hair and emptied my piggy bank. I had exactly £4.20 saved up, so I took £3. I hoped that, just like my astronaut stationery set, I could find 2 pomegranates that were on sale. First, we went to the fruit store that was at the bottom of our high street. It's run by a man and a woman called Mr. and Mrs. Marbles, who like to shout out, "Only a pan! Fruit and veg, only a pan!" to all the people that walk by. Their faces are always red and smiling. They wear giant square-shaped green belts around their waist, which look empty but jingle loudly when they walk. Mrs. Marbles helps people pick out the fruit they want, and Mr. Marbles puts them in a bag. We always buy our fruit and vegetables from them, and I've never known them not to have anything we need. But when we asked them if they had a pomegranate, they both shook their heads at us and told us to try the supermarket. So we walked up and over the hill to the supermarket. They had a fruit section that was as long as our house. But Mum couldn't see a pomegranate anywhere. We went over to a man who was stacking carrots and humming to himself and asked him if they had any pomegranates in store. He walked us over to a small box, but it was empty. "Sorry, love, looks like we've run out. You might want to try the bigger supermarket on the other side of town." Okay, thank you." Mum looked down at me and sighed. Then she said, "Come on, the adventure continues." We hopped onto a bus and after half an hour landed on an even bigger supermarket. This one had a car park as big as a football field and corridors as long as the ones in school. But we still couldn't find a pomegranate anywhere. "Let's ask someone," said Mum. "They must have them." We walked around and found a man dressed in a suit who was standing by the sandwich section. He had a label on his jacket that said, "Frank Smith, floor manager." I didn't know what a floor manager was, but I guessed he had to make sure the floor was clean and help anyone who fell down get back up again. But Mr. Smith didn't look like the kind of person who would help anyone get up from a floor. He had lips that went downwards as if they never smiled, and his hair looked wet, as if a large bottle of oil had fallen on top of it. He was staring at a clipboard and muttering angrily to himself. "Excuse me, Frank, is it? Hi," said Mum, smiling. The man gave my mum a cold nod before continuing to fill in a long form. "We're looking for some pomegranates but can't seem to find any," said Mum, smiling even more. "We don't sell them here," said Frank, looking at his clipboard. "Oh, really? Any idea where we could find some?" continued Mum. "No." Mum looked at him for a few seconds and then said in her warmest voice, "Thank you. You've really outdone yourself in helping us today. Have a wonderful day." And grabbing my hand, she walked away. "Mum, why were you so nice to him?" I asked. "He was horrible. He didn't try and help us even a little bit." Because you should never be horrible to someone who's being horrible to you," said Mum. "Otherwise they win and make you just as bad as them. Now come on, let's get back on the bus. There's another place I know we can try." By this time I was getting hungry, so while we were waiting for the next bus, I ate my banana. Said my mum, looking at her watch. It was nearly 2:00 and there were some dark grey clouds gathering in the sky. "I'm afraid the next stop will have to be our last one, darling. It looks like it's going to start raining in a bit." A few seconds later, a very full bus pulled up in front of us and we squeezed on. I clung to Mum's coat because there weren't any empty seats and waited for our stop. I was worried because if this was our last try, then I had just one chance left to find a pomegranate. So I crossed my fingers and my toes and made a wish that we would. The next place felt like an awfully long way away, And when we finally got there, it was filled with so many people that we could hardly walk properly. There were lots and lots of market stalls lying in the middle of a big road, all selling fish and meat and bedsheets and long gold chains. There was a man with a microphone who was trying to sell perfumes like a game show host by shouting, "Roll up, roll up!" And next to him was a woman shouting, "Peter never picked potatoes as good as these before. Buy 'em now before they go." I wonder who Peter was and how much money he was making picking potatoes, but then I could smell onions and burgers being cooked somewhere, which made my tummy rumble. I love burgers, especially ones that have lots of fried onions and ketchup in them. But I wanted to save my money for the pomegranates, so I scrunched up my nose and tried not to smell anything at all. We visited every stall in the market, from the beginning of the street right to the end, but even though we looked as carefully as we couldn't find a single pomegranate anywhere. My mum had told me to look for a pinkish ball that looked like a very hard apple, which had a small crown on the top, but I couldn't see anything that looked even a little bit royal. "Try the store up the station," suggested one of the stall owners when Mum asked her for help. "They have everything under the sun in there. They should have some." "Thank you," said Mum. She grabbed my hand and gave it a squeeze because she could tell I was starting to give up hope. "Nearly there," she whispered. "I can feel it." We walked for 5 minutes down the road and up to the station and found the shop the woman in the market had told us about. It was much smaller than the big supermarket with Frank, the horrible floor manager, in it, but it was bright with lots of coloured lights and bowls of fruit and vegetables outside. It had everything you could think of: peaches and plums, mangoes and bananas, kiwis and pears, yellow apples and red apples and pink apples, and even a spiky pink and green fruit that I had never seen before. But we couldn't see any pomegranates. So we went inside and Mum asked the man standing behind the counter. "Ah," nodded the man, scratching the tip of his nose. "Pomegranate, I see for you." And talking out loud to himself, he hurried to a corner of the shop and quickly looked through some boxes. "Much regret," he called out, holding up an empty box. "No more, but we have delivery on Tuesday." The man came back and looked at us, and we looked at him. He had a large white beard, a moustache that was curly at the ends, and he was wearing a bright red turban. I liked him because his eyebrows were like hairy caterpillars, and they jumped up and down a lot when we spoke. "Oh, well," said Mum, "we tried at least." The man looked at me. I think he must have noticed that I was looking sad, because he said, "It is for little one?" I looked up and nodded. "And for my friend," I said. "He's new in my class and misses home, and that's what he used to have." "I see," he said, looking at me with a smile. Then he frowned as if he had just thought of something, and suddenly pointing his finger at the ceiling and crying out, "Aha!" he ran to a small door at the back of the shop and disappeared. Mum and I looked at each other in surprise. "He's funny," I said. "I like him." "He seems lovely," agreed Mum. After a few seconds, the man came back, but instead of returning to the counter, he came and stood in front of us. "They are not perfect, but will be okay," he said. And whipping his hands out from behind his back, he held up 2 little pink balls that each had a crown on top. "Oh," cried out Mum, clapping her hands. "You have some. They are little old. My wife, she says they are not perfect 100%, so we don't sell, you see," said the man, his eyebrows jumping up and down even more. "My wife, she knows everything about fruit, so I listen to her most." "They're perfect enough for us," laughed Mum. "Aren't they, darling?" I nodded as the man gently handed them to me. "You and friend, enjoy, please," he whispered, and tapped me on the nose with a finger that had a golden ring and a large red stone on it. I looked down at the pomegranates. They were the size of grapefruits and had hard, peachy pink and brown skin, and they was as smooth and as shiny as polished glass, and both of them had tiny flowers on the top made up of exactly 7 stiff brown petals. They were the best, most interesting things I had ever seen. Mum took out her purse because that's where I put my pocket money, but the man shook his head and waved his hand. No, no, you must not. It is gift for little one. Oh, no, you must let me. But the man held up his hands, which made Mum go quiet, and then put a hand on his chest. It is gift. They are not excellent, not new, so very poor gift. They are the best gifts, said Mum, aren't they, darling? I nodded, feeling so happy that I wanted to hug the man and the mum and jump up and down all at once. Thank you, sir, I said, giving the man an enormous smile. Welcome, welcome, he said, and smiling back, he gave me a pat on the top of my head and waved at us as we left the shop. What a wonderful man, said Mum, as she helped me put the pomegranates in my rucksack. He looked like a king, I said, thinking of the ring with the stone in it and his red turban. Mum laughed. He certainly has the heart of one. Maybe he is one. You can never tell with people. Now, seeing as our unexpected adventure is at an end, let's hurry home before it starts to pour. I looked up. Everything had suddenly turned dark and the sky was filled with large grey clouds, and they were so low you could hear them rumbling. I didn't care because I had 2 of the best presents I could ever have in my bag, given to me by a man with the heart of a king.